Welcome to a video-only version of Covered in Glory. Brett asked the Champions League for a redraw for a host, but he's still stuck with me, unfortunately. We decided to scrap the audio version this week because we usually record it on Thursday. And as you're watching this, you probably know yesterday was a bit chaotic in the Premier League, and trying to prep for the show felt even more pointless than Dele Alli packing his jersey when he heads to the stadium. Given the chaos that's going on in the league right now, we thought we'd come to you really quick and give some general advice of how we're approaching betting in these times of uncertainty. And obviously, betting and gambling in the times of COVID are the least important of all the things going on. But hey, we're still here to talk about them. So, Brett, when you look at everything that's happening with games being canceled, with players disappearing right before kickoff and all sorts of things, how do you view kind of both tactic and wagering as you look at these games?
I mean, it's kind of interesting. Like, if you strip out the damage that COVID has done to people and society and all that stuff, obviously we'll preface it with that. But it's kind of interesting the way that I think you can maybe sort of exploit some edges in the marketplace a little bit during these pandemic times. So I do a little bit of DFS stuff on top of my other degenerate things that I do here. And so one of the things that I always kind of like refer to it as, and I'm sure there's smarter people that have talked about it than me, is like player sliders, right? So when we're going to see these like constantly shifting lineups, like your beloved Chelsea is just throwing guys in and out left and right, and Saul even has to play now. Every player kind of has like, not only like a good bad quotient, like Saul being at the very bottom, like worst signing in Premier League history, bad. And then when Lukaku plays, it's really good. But they also, in soccer, because soccer is a sport of game states, one team can obviously play defense more often than the other. It's not usually a fair share of possessions. So certain players make lineups more defensive and certain players make lineups more attacking. And so let's say when Jamie Vardy misses due to like a COVID quarantine on Leicester, you can obviously look at like his goal scoring numbers, and the Lions and the marketplace can look at his goal scoring numbers, and you can see like, real measurable impact of like Jamie Vardy's goal scoring going out the window. But it's more like when Babacar Sumara plays for Yuri Tillemans, that edge, if you can kind of figure out the value of a midfielder, which soccer teams themselves are still trying to figure out, that is where it makes things really interesting. So like Liverpool is like a perfect example of this, right? So they always play three midfielders. I know I'm going to try to avoid talking about Chelsea anymore here for you, man. But they always play three midfielders. And like by far their most solid midfield is when Jordan Henderson plays with Thiago and Fabinho. That's like their best defensively solid midfield. So when you bet on a Liverpool game and you see the starting 11 come out, and there's variations where it's like Hendo and Naby Keita and Tyler Morton, that's going to actually show you that like this game might be a little more open for Liverpool because they don't have two defensive stalwarts in the midfield. So it could give you a marketplace edge on maybe like going against the Liverpool clean sheet, which is blasphemy on this podcast, but it could be.
What are you going to do? I mean,
I don't even know.
That's your one trick.
It's the only way that I can win. It's the only way that I can drink alcohol for free off you. But no, it is one of those things where, you can kind of see midfields like that. You've probably seen it too, right, Toby, with Chelsea, like certain players you trust more to be out there than other guys. And it's not necessarily like a talent thing. It's like where Tuchel puts them into different positions, right?
Yeah, I mean, watching the games this week from my point of view, and obviously you're bringing specific examples in because your knowledge is so deep and mine is so shallow, but just from observing it from my couch, defensive unity is way down because people could get Thanos snapped right before the game. People are playing together that have never actually played together, so defensive shapes look kind of awful. And then on the offensive side, in order to kind of beat these low blocks that are being set up by sides that are just trying to kind of hang on and survive, we're seeing a little bit of discombobulation of people trying to run through the middle because they also haven't played together and they might not be able to have a read on each other. So what I've kind of looked at and the edges that I'm looking at playing during this kind of extreme time of uncertainty is if there's going to be low blocks and there's going to be one team that just dominates time of possession, That means there's going to be a lot of panic defending, so yellow cards and corners, something that I am particularly love to always gamble on. And there's also going to be a lot of width play. So we're talking fullback crosses, and we're talking headed goals, and we're talking a lot of set pieces. So I think when I'm looking at this weekend, I'm actually going to avoid specific players just because who the hell knows. But I'm going to look at kind of these tactics. If there's going to be a low block and there's going to be a lot of wide balls played in, and there's going to be a lot of discombobulation, I will be playing the best teams to kind of come through. I'll be playing Liverpool and I'll be playing Man City, but I'll be playing things like yellow cards and corners and set pieces and headers that I think kind of trickle down from the style of COVID football that we're observing.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned the set pieces because last year I kind of took a look and there was like an explosion of set piece goals. I mean, again, what sites track what is specifically a set piece goal is always a little finicky. But there's generally was more last year in comparison to the pre-COVID times. And so I'm wondering if, like you said, set pieces rely, it's the only time of the game where soccer stops, right? And you can get organized and you can play a ball in without pressure, and you can, kind of run like certain teams are better than others at this, but you can kind of run like a set play designed to maybe get your tallest guy, unmarked running towards like an in-swinging corner or something. And I do think that there's definitely something to that. And the data kind of shows with like the little spike in set piece goals last year during COVID ball was that there's something to maybe like that couch logic of like, things are disorganized and set pieces are the only time when you can slow down the game and actually kind of like create an advantage without talent really being a key factor. So I think that's going to be interesting. The one thing I will say though, is that a lot of random shit might happen. So your beloved Chelsea played my terrible Everton yesterday, and it ended up being a 1-1 match. And we were texting before the match, just like how god awful the Everton formation was that they put out there. But they get the 1-1 result, and you're like, oh, that's like COVID shit. It's just a weird match. Something happened. I mean, that was more like general bad luck for Chelsea. Like they absolutely dominated that match. They created almost 3 expected goals. They outshot Everton 23-5. Everton basically got a goal because Saul is the worst Premier League signing ever. And he left the back post wide open, and some 18-year-old center back from Everton just happened to get his foot on it and on a really tough chance and direct the ball past Mendy. Like that's more standard bad luck, though it did come on a set piece, than it really was like some like COVID randomness going on. That shit happens all the time in soccer, and Chelsea just got really unlucky yesterday. So it's one of those things where you can bet on random events to happen, but you have to be careful to like differentiate standard bad luck in soccer, because soccer is a weird fluky sport, to like COVID ravaged lineups having random events happen.
Yeah, well, they're talking about maybe shutting down until January. We don't know what's going to happen or not. I'm going to have some fun betting tomorrow because who knows if we're going to be able to do it again. But we just wanted to come in really quick, give you some advice on what we're seeing as we enter this really uncertain weekend. Hopefully next weekend we will be back talking about Boxing Day. But if not, we have a special show planned. So listen for us on our podcast next week either way. In the meantime, stay safe and enjoy the games. Thanks, everybody.
Stay safe and take care, everybody.